Hello guys, and welcome to another episode of How to Play with me, Lone Vic. Today we are talking about Wild Serengeti, a very cool puzzly set collection game about the wild animals living in the African Serengeti. We will take a closer look at how to set up this game, at how to play it, and also I will mention the solo and cooperative rules. This is a game for 1 to 4 players and it lasts around 1 to 1.5 hours depending on how fast the players are taking their turn basically. If you like this video, if you want to support my channel, if you like what I'm doing here, if you found this video helpful, click the like button under the video, hit the subscribe, ring the notification bell to be notified about new videos from me. And for now, let's dive in how to set up Wild Serengeti. Okay. So I've got the biggest pieces basically laid out right now and we will go through this. You need the main board, which is double-sided, and you can use whichever side you want. The board has a different layout of areas on each side for variety's sake. Next, you need to place this action board next to the main board, and in these spaces over here, you need to place 3 animals of each type shown here. So for example, here we've got alligators, leopards and lions, rhinoceri and elephants and giraffes, etc, etc. So in each of those boxes, we will have 9 animals after we've populated those. So let's quickly rewind forward and continue from there. There we go. So we've got 9 animals of 3 types in each of those areas. Now, if you are playing with less than 4 players, you should cover the spaces on the action board that have the numbers in the corner with these special padlock tokens. So if you are playing a game of 4 players, you do not cover anything. If you are playing a game of 3 players, place a padlock on each area that has a 4p symbol in the corner, like so. And if you are playing a 2-player game, you additionally need to cover all the areas with a 3p symbol in the corner. For a solo game, you treat the board as it was for 2 players, so with both the 3 and 4-player areas covered. The scene cards should be shuffled thoroughly, and trust me, I did that before the setup of the game. And you need to place the deck face down near the board and create a market of 6 cards face up somewhere next to the board. You also leave a place for the discard pile. Now, you take this cardboard stand, which is called the Rock of the Ages in this game, assemble it carefully and place it somewhere near the board as well. You take the round tracker, which is this bird token, or meeple in this case, and place it on round 1. And next, you take all the award tiles that you have with the game, give them a good shuffle, choose 2, and flip them over on the indicated spaces on the Rock of the Ages. Return the rest of them into the box. The box also comes with great migration cards, which you should shuffle and place somewhere nearby as well. The coins, food, and VFX tokens should be placed somewhere near the board within easy reach for all the players. I will just place them somewhere off screen for now. Each player takes 2 player markers of the color of their choice and place 1 on the 0 space on the victory point track and place the other together with your video gallery bar in your play area. Each player now is given 8 scene cards of which they can keep 4, as you can see, I've already predetermined those 4 that I am keeping for this setup. If you are playing the advanced game that's using the specialist cards, this is the time to take 3 specialist cards per player out of the provided deck, and then each player selects 1 specialist out of those 3 and adds them to their setup. Now, these specialists, as you can see, have a difficulty level in the top right corner, which will tell you how complicated the effect of the specialist is, and this might influence your decision. I won't be adding a specialist for this setup, but the rulebook explains very well how to use those cards when you want to add them. Each player also receives 6 coins for the start of the game, and you have to decide which player will receive the first player marker, which in my case is this wooden tree meeple, and hand it over to the first player. And right now you are ready to play Wild Serengeti. Okay, so the main goal of the game in Wild Serengeti is to be the first player with the highest documentary score, which are those victory points that you will be collecting throughout the game, at the end of the game. The victory points are always represented with this star icon, like for example on this card over here, which can give 9 documentary score, so 9 victory points if you manage to collect this card, and you mark your victory points on this track around the board. Now let's talk about the basic overview of the round structure. So a game of Wild Serengeti lasts 6 rounds, as you can see on the Rock of the Ages, and each round players will be paying 1 or 2 coins to perform the actions that we have on the action board, using their camera marker to mark which action they want to perform. This will be happening in a clockwise direction, starting with the first player until all players pass. And the round ends obviously when all the players have passed, and when a single round is completed, we need to prepare for another round, and after round 6, the game ends and the player with the most victory points wins. So let's take a look at how a round of Wild Serengeti plays. Now, during each round, players perform a basic action in turns. To perform a basic action, the player places their player marker that's remaining in their player space on any of the actions on the action board and pays the indicated cost. There are 8 different action spaces here, 1, 2, 3, 4 on the top and 1, 2, 3, 4 on the bottom. And if there is a camera in a small space, this enclosed space over here, then it's an occupied space, and this means that no other player can take this space. But there are those not entirely enclosed larger spaces that other players can take, but they're more expensive. So if you are the first person to take an action, for example, in a 3-player game, because we've got those padlocks locking out the 4-player actions right now, then this will mean that you get the cheaper action and all the other players that want to take this action will have to pay more. When the turn circles around back to you, you will have to choose another action, and that means that you will have to move your camera from the space that it is in into another empty space, which means that you can't perform the same area action twice unless you want to move to this second empty space and pay more for doing the same action. So basically your camera can't stay in the same spot in the next turn. You always have to move it. And those are basically the general rules. Now let's talk about what each of those 8 spaces do. So if you, in your turn, go here and pay 1 coin, you can discover a carnivorous predator. What this means is that you take any of the animals available in this space, for instance, let's take a lion, and you discover it by placing it on any empty space on the main board. Now, remember that this has to be an empty space. There is not a situation in this game where two animals or more can be in a single square. So you can always only move and place the animals on empty squares. So let's say that the lion will go here. Those next three areas for actions are the same, but for different groups of animals. So if you go here and you pay 1 coin, you will discover a large mammal, be it a giraffe, an elephant, or a rhinoceros. If you go here, you will discover a scavenger after paying this 1 coin, which is going to be either a coyote or a hyena or a vulture. And if you go here, you will discover a zebra, an antelope, or a buffalo. I think this is a buffalo, basically. So any of the migratory herbivores. And those are the 4 top actions, so they allow you to populate the board. Let's talk about the bottom actions. Now, if you go here into the swap animal position and pay 1 coin, or 2 if both of those spaces are occupied, for example, and there are at least 2 animals on the board, because that's the requirement for this, you are able to swap those animals in their positions no matter where they are on the board. So you basically get to flip them around between each other. And note that this action is not available in the first round, which is mentioned with this red crossed over circle here and also here. Now, the next action is move animal 1, 2, or 3 spaces, and this action is also not available during the first round, but if you were in another round and you paid the designated cost, you would be able to move an animal 1, 2, or 3 spaces into a new space. Now, an animal can move through spaces with other animals, but obviously it can't end a movement in a space with another animal. So for example, a movement of 1 couldn't take me here, but I could go here or here. We can't also move diagonally, only vertical and horizontal movements can. Okay, the next action that we have here means that we take 1 card from the scene card pool, so basically from the market that we have next to the board. And for every extra coin that we spend on this action, apart from the cost, we can take an extra card. So if I spend only 1 coin paying for the space, I take only 1 card from here. If I pay an extra coin, so I pay 2, I take 2 cards, 3 coins give me 3 cards, etc., etc., etc. I can add those cards into my collection of cards, into my hand, but the total amount of cards that I can have at any given time is 8. So if I already have 8 cards and I want to take a new one from here, I need to discard one of the ones that I already had. And the last action is renew the scene card pool and take 1 card. So this is almost identical as the previous action, but it first, before you take any card from the pool, you discard all the 6 cards and you draw new from the deck. And that's basically it when it comes to the action overview. So every player takes an action going around and around and around until they run out of money for this round, or until they say pass, because they can say pass before they run out of money because they want to save some cash for another round. A player cannot pass if they have 3 or more coins. That's also something that you need to remember. So you can't start with your 6 coins and just say that you pass and then go to the next round with a bank full of money. You have to have less than 3 coins in order to be able to pass. And once you pass, you cannot perform any more actions on the board. On your turn, you can also perform something that's called a free action. Now, free actions are very simple and you can do them anytime during your turn and as many times as you want. You can always discard 2 incompleted scene cards to get 1 coin. You also can complete the scene cards that you have in your collection, and we'll be talking about that later on. And you can also spend the food and VFX tokens. We will get back to the tokens and completing the scene cards in just a moment. So let's take a look at the scene cards right now. So here we have examples of the 3 different types of scene cards that you will encounter in the game. We've got terrain scenes, we've got adjacency scenes, and we've got straight line scenes. And those cards have different symbols in their upper right corners, which will be important during endgame scoring or during the round preparation phases. And they sometimes have rewards at the bottom of the cards, which are granted automatically once the card is fulfilled. So let's talk about how we fulfill a scene card. Now, let's take this one to start with. So a straight line scene, which will give us 10 victory points if it is completed, and it has this collection of animals. Let's move to the main board. Okay, so in order to complete this card, a player that owns it has to lead up to a situation in which we have a buffalo, an alligator, a lion, and a giraffe all on the board in this particular order. So here I've got a buffalo, I've got an alligator here, I've got a lion here, and I've got a giraffe here. Additionally, the alligator and the giraffe both have to be on a grassy area. And my alligator is on a grassy area and my giraffe is on a grassy area. So this card would be completed, and as a free action I could complete it during my round and gain my 10 points. Now, it doesn't matter if there are different animals between the ones that I have required. I only need a vertical or a horizontal, a horizontal or a vertical line that has this exact order of animals in it. No other animals in between matter to me. This line can be from front to back or from back to front. It also doesn't matter. So I could as easily fulfill this card by having this order reversed like this: giraffe, lion, crocodile or alligator, and then the buffalo if the terrains match. And in this case, they do. Now let's take a look at the adjacency scene card. Now, as you can see, this one would give me an amount of victory points equal to the amount of those symbols that I have collected in those on my cards, on all of my cards. So those paw print symbols minus 4. So right now it would give me 0 basically. But if you have collected a lot of those symbols already, then you can get a substantial amount of victory points. And this card, the adjacency scene, requires a giraffe, a vulture, and a lion, but it's different from a straight line scene. And let's go to the main board to see how. So for this card, I would need to move the animals or swap the animals around so that the lion is on a grassy space. So this is cool, for example, and this top animal in an adjacency scene is the central animal, and the animals below it, whether there is only 1 or 2 or 3, have to be neighboring the central animal. So in this case, the vulture and the giraffe have to be neighboring the lion. So either top, bottom, left or right, doesn't matter which. So you have to create this kind of a group. And as you can see, the vulture and the giraffe don't have any terrain requirements. The last type of a card is the terrain scene. And let's take a look at this one. As you can see, it doesn't have any rewards immediately, but this red symbol means that this card will grant me a VFX token at the beginning of every round or during every round preparation phase. And what I need to do in order to fulfill this card is that I need to have these 4 types of animals on those terrains anywhere on the map. So let's take a look at the main board to see how I could achieve that. So for this card, I would need a giraffe and an antelope or buffalo, sorry, on water spaces, and an alligator and a jackal in forest spaces. It doesn't matter where they are on the board, just as long as the requirements for the terrain are fulfilled. So once you collect any of those scenes that you have in your hand, you move them over your video gallery bar so as to differentiate them from the scenes that you haven't completed yet. And remember that you can have only 8 incompleted scenes maximum, and you can have as many as you want of those completed scenes. Now, the free actions that you could use those VFX and food tokens for are there to help you complete your scene cards. For spending 1 food token, anytime during your round, you can move any animal 1 space in any direction, regardless of this move animal action. So this can help you position the animals correctly, but remember that you can't have 2 animals in the same space. And each VFX token that you spend allows you to ignore a terrain requirement for a single animal on a card. So for example, for this card, which requires me to have a hyena in the mountains and a vulture on grass, if I spend a single VFX token, I can ignore either one of those requirements. If I have 2 tokens to spend, I can ignore both and just score this card if I have a line with a vulture and a hyena anywhere on the board, vertically or horizontally, regardless of the terrain. Now, let's talk about the last thing, to be honest, that's important when it comes to the symbols that you can see in the game, and those are the different icons that you can see in the top right corners of those cards. Now, sometimes you will get a card that has, let me go through the deck to show you this, here we go. Sometimes you can find cards that have the VFX or food symbols in the red in the top corners. These cards are used during the preparation phases in between the rounds, and for each symbol like this you will get 1 food or 1 VFX token. But remember that this only counts to the cards that you have completed, not the incomplete ones in your hand. Now, other types of icons are plant icons, for example those bananas or those flowers or those leaves. And these are simply collected on all of your cards, and sometimes when you complete a card, let me show you an example, you will have a reward in the form of an equation, like for example, bananas +2 or leaves +2 or flowers +2, including this card, gives you your victory points for completing this card. So you choose 1 type of icon, you add 2 to it, and this is your result. Those equations are different between different cards, and you just add everything up and that's it. Other icons that can appear are also the footprint icons, which we will be talking about in a moment when we are talking about the round preparation, but they also can take part in some of the equations here on the rewards. We also have the heart or like icons, which are important at the end of the game. And there are also very, very few cards, so I don't know if I will find it, with a diamond icon. Those are very unique cards. There are only 4, I think, or 6 in the whole deck. They give you a lot of points and they have a multiplier based on the amount of diamonds that you already have. So if you have already 1, you can go for more because you will get a lot of points here, but they are pretty tricky to complete sometimes. Like this one needs a rhinoceros in the central space surrounded by 3 jackals, and they all need, or coyotes, and they all need to be on a grassy space and 1 on a mountainous space. So they might be very tricky to pull off. Okay, So now you know how to complete the scene cards, now you know what those icons mean, and you know how to go through a round of the game. I also, at the end of this chapter, I will also mention that there are no hidden cards in the game. So both your incompleted and completed cards are always face up for all the players to see, which can be pretty important if you have some nasty players who like to play with negative interaction and spoil your potential scenes or something like that. But oh well. Okay, so after every player passes, and remember you can't pass if you have 3 or more coins, after all players pass, the round ends. And what happens during the round preparation phase before we go into the next round? Now, depending on the round we are in, there will be different things happening. Let's go through them one by one. In the round preparation phase, you move the round marker. Then you resolve any round events that happen, and in round 1, 2, and 3 there are no round events, but if the marker is being moved onto round 4, then we need to resolve both the Great Migration and the award ceremony. If the marker is moved into round 5, we need to resolve Great Migration, and in round 6, Great Migration and the other award ceremony as well. So let's talk about those. So first, if you would go into round 4 at the beginning of the preparation phase, you would first resolve the award ceremony. And this one is connected to the rhinos. So each player goes through all of their completed scene cards and takes a look at how many rhinos do they have on those cards and how many of those footprint symbols they have. Each player adds up all the rhinos and all the footprint symbols that they have on all of their completed scene cards, and the player who has the most gets the first award, which is rhinos times 2 of a victory points, and the second player gets rhinos times 1 of victory points. The third and the fourth eventual player get nothing. The same happens if you are resolving the second award ceremony, in our case for the crocodiles. If there is a tie for first place, both players receive the first place rewards. And the rule also applies when there are ties for the second place. So there are no punishing effects if there are any ties. And after any potential award ceremony is resolved, then we go to the Great Migration. And the Great Migration happens at the start when the marker moves to rounds 4, 5, and 6. And this means that you draw a card from the Great Migration deck, you take a look at it, orienting it north, south, west, and east, like the board is laid out, and in a 1, 2, or 3 player game, you remove all the animals that are standing on the brown marked squares on this card. And in a 4 player game, you also remove the animals from the blue squares. So in my situation, if this would be a 3 player game, I would have to empty this square. I would have to empty these 2 squares, right? I would have to empty this one and this one, also this and this, but they're empty luckily. And I would have to empty this and this as well. And then you set this card aside because it won't be used anymore in the game. So this is the way to empty the board a bit before the further rounds continue. And the same Great Migration happens when the token is moved into the preparation for round 5 and then round 6, but then it's preceded by an award ceremony again. After you are done with the ceremonies and the Great Migrations, or if you are in those beginning rounds and you don't have those awards and migrations to do, you clear out the market of your cards. So you basically throw those cards into the discard and redraw up to 6 again. Then each player draws 4 scene cards from the deck and picks 1 to add to their incompleted scene cards. If you have 8 before you draw this, then you have to, swap for one of the ones that you have, because there is a limit of 8, obviously. You receive all of your rewards for the round. So the number of coins that's below the round, so 6, 6, 7, 7, or 7, and all the VFX tokens and food tokens that could be marked on your cards in the top right corner, and then you move the first player marker to the player next in clockwise order. Now, the game ends after round 6 is completed, and after the game has ended, the players count up their scores along with bonuses from like icons or specialist cards effects, and the player with the highest score wins. And talking about those, so basically when you are calculating the VP for the cards that you are fulfilling, for the scenes that you are completing, you get those rewards automatically, the ones that you have on the bottom. But there is one icon type that scores only at the end of the game, and those are the like icons, those hearts. So when it comes to the hearts, each player gains the amount of victory points at the end of the game depending on the number of likes or hearts they've collected on all of their scene cards under their video gallery or in their video gallery. And you get rewards from 3 hearts collected upwards. And as you can see, there is a table in the rulebook just for that. So 3 heart icons will give you 7 points, 4 will give you 10, 5 will give you 14, 10 hearts collected will give you 50 victory points. And if you have 11 or 12, then you can count up to 10, and the rest of them will count for a second group. So 11 or 12 wouldn't give you any extras, but for example 14 would give you 50 for the 10 and 10 victory points for the additional 4. So sometimes it pays off to collect those hearts if you have a chance to do so. And that's it, ladies and gentlemen. This is a whole game of Wild Serengeti. So hopefully now you will be able to play this game or explain this game better, or now I've explained to you any doubts or questions that you might have had when it comes to this game. Now, if the competitive play mode is the only one that you are interested in, then you can stop watching the video right now. Thank you for being here. My name was Lone Vic. This was Wild Serengeti. And please remember to click the like, hit the subscribe, and ring the notification bell if you enjoyed watching this video. But if you want to hear about the teensy tiny changes when it comes to the co-op or solo mode and how they're played, please stick with me for another 5 minutes or so. So before you start playing a solo or a co-op scenario, you need to go to the almost last page of the rulebook and select one of the 6 scenarios that you will be playing. This is both for solo and co-op because they have rules for all numbers of players. And if you want to play a co-op game, the only difference from a regular setup that we have here is that before the start of the game, when you are choosing the advanced specialist cards, you don't draw 3 and choose 1, but each player chooses 1 specialist from the whole deck, and you can communicate about that. And the co-op play is exactly the same as a normal game, but all players have only 1 victory point marker that's going around the board, so all players collect victory points cumulatively, and you can't trade any resources, so coins, VFX, or food, or any cards between players. So everybody has to cooperate as to how to place the animals, to fill the scenes, and to complete the goals. While when we are setting up a game for a single player, there are 2 basic changes when it comes to the setup. The first change comes after we have placed all those animals here. From each group of those 4 groups of animals, the solo player should take 2, so for example, like so, and place them anywhere on the board at random as they wish before you continue with the setup, getting the cards and everything. So in the beginning of the game, there should be 8 animals on the board for a solo play. And the second change in the rules is that the market always has 8 cards instead of 6. So you should add 2 more cards when you are playing with 1 player solo. Okay. and the gameplay continues normally with a solo player just moving through those spaces, paying the money and so forth and so on, placing animals, moving animals, etc, etc, etc. What do the scenarios do, however, is that when you finish each round, you need to check in the scenario whether you have reached the required condition for each round. So for example, in scenario 1, we have a target score of 150 for one player, 330 points for two players, 615 for three players, and 815 for four players. That's for the end of the game. So if at the end of the game you have achieved the target score for your number of players, you win. But for each round, you also have a target. So for example, in round 1, if you as a single player didn't get 5 victory points, you lose automatically. After round 2, you need to have 15. After round 3, you need to have 35, and so forth and so on. And for 2 players, 3 players, and 4 players, this is also changing. Now, in another scenario, those conditions for the end of the game are also points, but during the rounds, the conditions might be different. For example, the total number of food and VFX tokens in the player's possession should be greater or equal to 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5, and so forth and so on when you are checking those conditions. So if you fail any of these conditions at the end of the round that you are checking, then you basically lose the game automatically and you have to try again. Additionally, when it comes to the solo players, the award ceremony will look a bit different, because if you are in the beginning of round 4 or round 6 preparation and you have the award ceremony, then if the player doesn't fulfill a condition for the award, then they get the second place, and if they fulfill the condition, they get the first place. And for the first award ceremony, the condition is that they have to have 4 or more wild animals and the paw print icons to fill the condition. For the second one, they need 8. So if you have 4 rhinoceros in a single player game, or the animal icons, you get the first reward. If not, you get the second one. And for this one, you would get 8 crocodiles, first place, not less than 8 crocodiles and icons, second place. And that's basically it. Okay, so guys, this is the end for Wild Serengeti. Both the competitive, co-op and solo rules have been explained. I hope that this video has been helpful, not at all boring, and that it clarified some doubts or you've learned something about it. Thank you for watching, thank you for staying with me. My name was Lone Vic, this was Wild Serengeti, and see you soon in my other videos on this channel. You can check out how to play, solo playthroughs and reviews that I'm throwing here quite regularly right now. And if you want to support the channel, I'll repeat it once again, click the like button, hit the subscribe, ring the notification bell to be notified about new videos that are appearing here. And for now, have a great day. Thank you very much and bye-bye.